Bible teaches us to be doers of the word and not merely hearers. We're required to have a living, breathing, active faith in our own lives. And each of us is called on to give something of ourselves for the betterment of others and to live the truth of our faith, not just with words, but with deeds. So even as we join the great debates of our age, how we best put people back to work, how we ensure opportunity for every child, the role of government in protecting this extraordinary planet that God has made for us, how we lessen the occasions of war. Even as we debate these great issues, we must be reminded of the difference that we can make each day in our small interactions, in our personal lives, as a loving husband, or a supportive parent, or a good neighbor, or a helpful colleague. In each of these roles, we help bring His kingdom to earth. And as important as government policy may be in shaping our world, we are reminded that it's the cumulative acts of kindness and courage and charity and love. It's the respect we show each other and the generosity that we share with each other that in our everyday lives will somehow sustain us.
Some of you regularly act upon the wisdom handed down to us by the common people of ancient times and of today. How refreshing it is to see leaders who know and act upon the wisdom of the world's greatest proverbs.
Hi everybody, welcome. I'm your host, Binary Mouse, and we have a truly fantastic guest appearance. Let's give a big welcome to the President of the United States, Barack Obama! The President often says that although he is our national leader, he stands on the shoulders of giants. What you may not know is that he gathers much of his wisdom and guidance from sayings and proverbs of common people throughout the ages and throughout the world. There's an old Russian proverb which states, "A man is judged by his deeds, not by his words." It's telling us that people can say many things because talking is easy, but it's more important what person does than what he says he will do. Many different nationalities have very similar proverbs, as well as the same theme being found in the world's major religions. Mr. President, what is this proverb meant to you?
Each and every day, for many in this room, the biblical injunctions are not just words, they are also deeds. Every single day in different ways, so many of you are living out your faith in service to others. And I know that many in this room don't believe that progress has come fast enough. And I understand that. It's not for me to tell you to be patient, any more than it was for others to counsel patience to African Americans who were petitioning for equal rights a half century ago. But I say this, we have made progress, and we will make more. And I want you to know that I expect and hope to be judged not by words, not by promises I've made, but by the promises that my administration keeps. Indeed, that's the story of the movement for fairness and equality. Not just for those who are gay, but for all those in our history who've been denied the rights and responsibilities of citizenship, who've been told that the full blessings and opportunities of this country were closed to them. It's the story of progress sought by those who started off with little influence or power, by men and women who brought about change through quiet, personal acts of compassion and courage and sometimes defiance, wherever and whenever they could. It's the story of an epidemic that decimated a community and the gay men and women who came to support one another and save one another, and who continue to fight this scourge, and who've demonstrated before the world that different kinds of families can show the same compassion and support in a time of need, that we all share the capacity to love. So this story, this struggle, continues today. For even as we face extraordinary challenges as a nation, we cannot and will not put aside issues of basic equality. We seek an America in which no one feels the pain of discrimination based on who you are or who you love.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that example. We've assembled some video clips for the show that really show your commitment as president to, as we say in America, not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. Let's show them now, shall we?
I am announcing that the American combat mission in Iraq has ended. Operation Iraqi Freedom is over, and the Iraqi people now have lead responsibility for the security of their country. This was my pledge to the American people as a candidate for this office. I know this historic moment comes at a time of great uncertainty for many Americans. We've now been through nearly a decade of war. We've endured a long and painful recession. And sometimes, in the midst of these storms, the future that we're trying to build for our nation, a future of lasting peace and long-term prosperity, may seem beyond our reach. But this milestone should serve as a reminder to all Americans that the future is ours to shape if we move forward with confidence and commitment. It should also serve as a message to the world that the United States of America intends to sustain and strengthen our leadership in this young century. From this desk, 7.5 years ago, President Bush announced the beginning of military operations in Iraq. Much has changed since that night. A war to disarm a state became a fight against an insurgency. Terrorism and sectarian warfare threatened to tear Iraq apart. Thousands of Americans gave their lives. Tens of thousands have been wounded. Our relations abroad were strained. Our unity at home was tested. These are the rough waters encountered during the course of one of America's longest wars. Yet there has been one constant amidst these shifting tides. At every turn, America's men and women in uniform have served with courage and resolve. As Commander-in-Chief, I am incredibly proud of their service. Like all Americans, I am awed by their sacrifice and by the sacrifices of their families.
Over the last 10 years alone, the drug and insurance companies spent $1 billion in preventing health care reform from happening. That's going to require then a mobilization of energy among the American people to insist on a Congress and a White House that are actually going to deliver this time. And it also means somebody who's going to have the capacity to bring people together across various divides, getting business, getting labor, getting doctors and nurses, consumers to join together to craft this kind of new legislation. Well, the system's broken, and I think that people all across the country recognize that. Certainly I don't accept the idea that in the richest country on earth we should have 47 million people without health insurance and millions more people who are being bankrupt because of a medical bill. And I know something about this personally. My mother died of ovarian cancer when she was 53. In the waning months of her life, she was not spending all her time thinking about how to get well or even how to come to terms with her own mortality. She was spending time thinking about whether or not the insurance company was going to cover her expenses because she had gotten sick right before taking a new job, and it wasn't clear whether this was going to be considered a pre-existing condition. And that's wrong. There's something fundamentally wrong about that, and that's why, as President of the United States, what I've proposed to do is to make sure that we've got a plan that covers all Americans.
The very first promise I made on this campaign was that as president, I will sign a universal health care plan into law by the end of my first term in office.
Earlier today, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of the Affordable Care Act, the name of the health care reform we passed 2 years ago. In doing so, they've reaffirmed a fundamental principle that here in America, in the wealthiest nation on earth, no illness or accident should lead to any family's financial ruin. I know there will be a lot of discussion today about the politics of all this, about who won and who lost. That's how these things tend to be viewed here in Washington. But that discussion completely misses the point. Whatever the politics, today's decision was a victory for people all over this country whose lives will be more secure because of this law and the Supreme Court's decision to uphold it.